It's about time we started looking seriously at our problems without the ball, don't you think? Even when we were on that winning streak earlier this season, we never really looked secure at the back. Out of all those games, we only managed one clean sheet, and that was against Burnley. And let's be honest, Burnley spent the entire game sitting back and defending like a prime Mourinho side, so it's not like we were truly tested in that one. Now, the loss against Crystal Palace is not the only reason these problems are being talked about, but it's the way we lost that has everyone concerned. If it wasn't for Alisson, Palace would have finished the game in the first half. That's what really pushed us to go back and rewatch the match to figure out exactly what went wrong whenever we didn't have the ball. So before we get into it, make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons, and let's dive straight into the video. Palace's first shot on target in this match was actually the goal they scored. It came from a corner that we defended really poorly. But the worrying part is what happened after that. They created more than one clear chance to score again. And it all started with this sequence, which surprisingly came as a direct result of our own in-possession tactics. Here you can see Van Dijk and Konate taking the responsibility of finding solutions during the build-up. At first that worked out alright because Mac Allister dropped deeper to give them a passing option, and that helped us push forward and gain some ground. The real issue came afterwards. With Mac Allister staying deep and Kirkez pushing higher up the pitch, a really dangerous matchup started to form. Now, both Ibu and Van Dijk are excellent passers for defenders, but there's only so much they can do when no one is showing for the ball. If you don't give them enough options, of course they'll struggle to play through compact blocks. That is not on them, it is just the reality of defenders being asked to do too much on the ball. As they tried to figure a way forward, pay attention to the situation that developed between Mac Allister and Sarr. Once Kamada decided to step up and press Konate while cutting off the passing lane behind him, Ibu was caught off guard. The moment Palace won the ball back, the transition was on, and it became a foot race. Mac Allister had no chance of catching someone with Sarr's pace. Within seconds, Palace were in a dangerous position and managed to create a cutback chance that could have easily been their second goal inside just 1 minute. Thankfully, we had Alisson to serve us. The problem here is that we are putting way too much responsibility on our centre-backs when we have the ball, especially against teams that sit in compact blocks. Once we push forward and gain territory, we leave ourselves exposed. The moment we lose possession, the whole structure becomes fragile because we are left with only 2 players behind the ball. That is not nearly enough cover against a side that knows how to break quickly. The rotations between Mac Allister and Kirkez made things even worse. By switching positions, they actually handed Palace the advantage, giving Sarr exactly the matchup he wanted on that right-hand side. That kind of situation is asking for trouble. So not only were we creating problems for ourselves with this in-possession setup, but Crystal Palace were also sharp enough to exploit one of Arne Slot's biggest tactical flaws. Let's take this sequence as an example. It starts from a simple throw-in, but look at the numbers. Notice how many of our players were pushed into Palace's third compared to their 7 defenders already in position. On top of that, they even managed to create a 3 versus 2 overload in the wide area. And if you zoom out a bit, the bigger picture shows a 5 versus 3 in their favour. With that kind of advantage, Palace had both the time and the space to treat it almost like a rondo. They just kept the ball moving around in that small pocket, and because we didn't commit enough players to press properly, they were able to switch the play out wide. The ball went to Pino, who cleverly dropped deep, adding even more confusion about who was supposed to pick him up. From there, it was quick and simple. Wharton found the perfect pass to slip Mateta through. Mateta managed to win his duel with Konate, and once again, we were completely exposed. And just like before, thank God for Alisson, because he was the one who kept us alive. He bailed us out again and again during that first half. This kind of switch was something Palace kept looking to exploit as the game went on. Once again, notice the numerical advantage they had in their own half. The switch this time was even easier, with Gueye stepping out from the back line to receive the ball behind Salah, and look at the space he suddenly had in front of him to carry the ball forward. Now, why was that the case? The answer actually goes back to an issue we already saw last season. If you look closely, you can see Gravenberch and McAllister almost sitting on the defensive line. The reason for that is simple. They were being dragged and pinned by Palace's number 10s. With our midfield pulled out of position like that, Palace quickly worked the overload down the left-hand side and created yet another cutback situation that could have easily been a goal. And once again, all of this comes back to Slot's preference for keeping a +1 on the back line. We talked about this exact approach in our previous video when we broke down the pressing patterns against Southampton, and here we can clearly see the downside of that setup. This raises some important questions. Why don't we ever commit fully to the press? Why do we always insist on keeping that numerical advantage in the back line? Is it about protecting Van Dijk and Konate so they don't have to cover too much ground? Or is it about saving the forwards' energy for later in the game? Whatever the reason, this approach has caused us problems before, and it is clearly causing them again now. Maybe it's time to start rethinking that setup. Now, while Palace had success with their overloads and switches, their main weapon throughout the game was much more direct. It was the long ball over the top. And to be honest, this does not need a deep tactical breakdown because it's very straightforward. We simply did not win enough of the first or second balls. Konate in particular struggled in his duels with Mateta. To be fair, the French striker is a handful for any defender, but it was still surprising to see him dominate Ibu the way he did. Palace used him as their main target whenever they wanted to progress play or stretch the channels, and that gave us all sorts of problems. So, to wrap everything up, this game really showed us once again where our weaknesses are when we don't have the ball. The patterns are not new, we saw them last season, and we're still seeing them now. The reliance on our centre-backs to find solutions in possession, the lack of cover behind the ball, the rotations that open up dangerous matchups, and the preference to always keep that +1 at the back line, all of these things are adding up and leaving us exposed against teams that know how to hurt us. Crystal Palace did their homework, they pressed smart, they switched play at the right times, and they constantly looked for Mateta as an outlet. And the truth is, they caused us more problems than the scoreline even suggests. If it wasn't for Alisson, this game could have easily gotten out of hand before halftime. Now, of course, it's not all negative. There are moments when this system works, and when it does, we look in control. But the question is, how often can we keep relying on individuals like Alisson or Van Dijk to bail us out? At some point, the structure itself has to be strong enough to deal with these situations. So maybe it's time for Slot to adjust. Maybe it's time to be more aggressive in the press, or to give the midfield more support so they don't get dragged out of position. These are things that can be fixed, but they need to be addressed sooner rather than later. What do you think? Should Slot stick with his approach and trust it will improve over time, or is it time to tweak things? Do you think we need to press higher, or maybe even change our shape? And how do you see players like McAllister fitting into this setup going forward? Let us know what you think in the comments, and as always, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more analysis.